In here we should have two new Orient watches from TUS Watches, and this is a new addition to the ever popular Bambino line, and one of the best looking I've seen in their range for quite some time too. So thanks to TUS Watches for providing both of these samples for us to take a look at today. You'll find a link to all the watches I'm featuring in the video description, as well as any other colours they make, international shipping, and very good service. But anyway, let's take a look, give you a first look on YouTube of these watches. Okay, so it looks like they have actually provided 4 for us to take a look at, and I forgot they said they were sending 4. He wanted me to see each colour, although most of these will be going back. And I think we're in for a bit of a treat actually here, given how they look through the film. Let's have a closer look. Now, if you order one of these, I would expect 1 in each box rather than 2 squeezed in like this. This is just for shipping cost purposes. And here we go. So here's your first look at the Orient Bambino small seconds 38mm version. Now, this isn't the first sub-second Bambino that we've seen. They do make another one which is larger. It's got like a champagne dial. That one's quite good looking already. But these are all in the vein of, I think it's the Bambino V2, but cased much smaller, 38mm case this time, but we'll check the measurements in a second. My first impressions are really good. I feel like this design just suits this size. That was always the problem really with the other versions of this watch. They're all in 40.5mm sizes, which especially for the more vintage inspired designs like this one, it just didn't quite suit. Whereas these, they look bob on. Now, this is my first time looking at a couple of these colors in the flesh. So I've never looked at the black version of the original Bambino, nor this gold and white option. And I'm really feeling both of them actually. I think my least favourite out of all of them is still the cream one, which is apparently one of the best sellers, and maybe because it looks better online in product imagery or something. But the dial on this is definitely the most flat out of all of them. The black is certainly the most unique and distinctive, I'll say that much. Whereas the other two, which is the two with the more white kind of dials, have got much more of a sunburst effect to them. And both of these look great. I would definitely wear either of them. And well done to Orient for choosing this style. I think the other versions of the Bambino, like there's the minimalist one, isn't there? The V3, is it? It didn't matter so much that that one was bigger, but this vintage style retro design works really nice with the smaller case. And I think these certainly look more interesting than the previous 38mm Bambino. Same automatic movement powering these as in many of the other Orient watches. It is similar to some Seiko calibers. Very responsive rotor there in that one. What movement is this exactly? It says in the back F622. Could be F6922. For some reason it is written differently on the back of some of these watches. And the bulk of the watch, it looks great. They aren't spec monsters, these though. You know, the domed crystal there is only mineral to my knowledge still. And that's despite the watches costing a fair chunk. I remember speaking to the owner of TUS Watches about this, because the RRP for these is fairly high. I think they were closing in on about 300 quid, which in my opinion is a bit too much. He did talk about giving me some sort of discount code, so I'll try and put that in the description if he's provided it by the time this video goes live, to bring them down to much more appropriate price for these, because not only have they got, you know, mid-tier specs at best, but the strap is just bare bones. It says calf, as in calf leather on the back, but it certainly maintains some of that plasticky feel. Across the width, about 38.3. Lug to lug, just over 44. Fairly compact. I don't know whether it's just me, but this looks slimmer than the previous 38mm Bambinos. So 12mm with the crystal, and without it, it is very thin. About 8.6 thick, I would guess. But I think these are going to look great on the wrist. Let's have a look. Some of the recent gold Casios have really got me in the mood for gold watches, so let's try that one first. So that's the gold one on wrist. My wrist is 6¼ inches for reference. So pretty small wrist, and this fits fairly well, as you can see. But I just think this size is going to be better for like 90% of you watching this video compared to the standard version of this watch. I wonder if they released a super thin quartz version of this watch, given that it's already sub-seconds anyway, if that would also prove popular. I know that Orient does have some Bambino styled quartz watches already. This is one thing that's kind of missing from my collection, like a proper retro style watch like this. The closest I've got is probably Seagull 1963, unless I went out and bought a vintage watch. Most of these vintage style watches are actually a bit big these days. Here's the low-key black model. I think this looks great for a black watch. Now, it's funny, I went through a phase where I really was into black watches. I'd never really considered a black watch of this style before. I always have lent towards the lighter dialed watches for dress watches. But I think this looks awesome. I really like the subdial on it too. It's got a kind of high shine subdial. Could be my favorite so far. Let's try the others. This one's the one that's styled on the previous bestseller. I'm just not quite as impressed by this one in person as online. Like, I'm looking through the camera screen here and it looks better on camera than it does in person, in my opinion. It's fine, but in the flesh, the dials on these other two lighter dial watches certainly look more expensive. I haven't got any word on water resistance on these yet. This very much is a first look, but on the rear it just says water resistant, which I'm assuming basically means splash proof, which isn't a major deal for watches like this. Something to bear in mind, well, really is nice and slim, this watch, is there's no luminescence from the looks of things, which is somewhat of a disadvantage if you're in a low light environment, as you might be in a watch like this. But overall, really like these. Stylistically, I think this is kind of what we've been waiting for some time here. I feel like this is the Bambino that has most bases covered off. Obviously, it'd be better if it had sapphire instead, but proportionally, it just looks right now. Let's check that lug width. Has that changed, or is that still dodgy? Oh, wow. 20mm. Perfect. So you can actually try different straps as well. And there is something to be said for that. I'll give you a close-up of each of them. This one looks much better in person. Still constructed of stainless steel, just with this gold treatment plating on it. It does have a silver back. Except for the subdial, the black one still has quite a matte finish. I like the high contrast effect though. I think this one looks really good. This is like my dark horse pick in more ways than one, I guess. I think that looks baller for the money. Orient has a habit of making this particular colour dial look quite peachy from the photos of the product, but hopefully my video more accurately gets it across. Here it is. Almost like a greeny cream. It's definitely got a bit of green in it, which I'm not 100% feeling, to be honest. That's definitely my least favourite. I think this one looks great. Very similar dial effect to the previous one, to the gold one, should I say. Very simple. I think this one's going to be very popular too. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And before you shoot, I've got something really exciting to share with you. If you want to get my instant reactions and thoughts on all the latest watches, or if simply you want to be kept up to date on all the latest, more affordable watch releases, you can sign up to our newsletter. We send it out every Thursday, and we basically just summarize the most important low-cost watches released that week. I give you my thoughts on them all, as well as a few other bits and pieces. It's called In the Loop, and if you want to go follow it, you can check it out in the link in the description. No spam, no junk or any of that. Just one email a week with all the latest updates to save you browsing forever online like I've been. Most of those newsletters are just about luxury watches, whereas, you know, I'm more interested in stuff like this, trying to get the best bang for the buck. Anyway, the watches are linked below. Thanks to TUS Watches for sending over the Orient Bambino small seconds.